A baby was crying alone. She comforted him. But she didn't know who was watching. Before the story begins, tell me something. Where are you watching from? Write it here in the comments. I'd love to know how far our stories are reaching. And if you enjoy love stories that truly move you, full of twists and deep feelings, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It really helps our work grow and motivates us to keep bringing you stories that touch the heart. The clock read nearly 3 a.m. when Claire Dawson looked for the third time at the bluish screen of the reception computer. The main lobby of Denver's public hospital was silent, except for an irregular beep coming from an emergency room. The hallways felt colder than usual, not because of the temperature, but from the exhaustion soaked into the walls and the eyes of those who remained there. Claire, with her light brown hair tied up in a casual bun, grayish-green eyes deep with the pain she'd seen more than she wished, wore the hospital's light blue lab coat. The slightly worn sleeves gave away her years on shift. She was tired. But more than that, she was present. That's when she noticed. Sitting on a low bench by the wall, almost hidden in the shadow cast by the coffee machine, was a little girl. No more than 5 years old, with slightly wavy platinum blonde hair, a neatly pressed navy blue dress, white socks, and patent leather shoes. Her body was curled up, knees together, clutching a well-worn teddy bear in her lap. She stared at the floor, motionless, as if she wanted to disappear right there. Claire frowned. No companion, no triage bracelet on her arm. She stood up slowly, crossing the quiet lobby with steady steps. The girl didn't seem to notice her approach, until her eyes, large and incredibly blue, lifted for a moment only to lower again. "Hey, are you okay?" Claire asked, kneeling beside her. Her voice came out soft, as if afraid to scare her. "Where's your mommy?" No answer. Just tear-filled eyes and a trembling sigh. The teddy bear was squeezed tighter. Claire didn't push. She slowly pulled a clean tissue from the pocket of her coat and held it out to the girl without forcing contact. "It's okay. You don't have to talk if you don't want to." Silence. A silence heavier than the hospital air itself. The girl looked at the tissue for a few seconds, then at Claire. And in that fragile moment, an invisible line of trust began to form. She reached out her small hand, took the tissue, and wiped her face, still without saying a word. Claire then sat on the cold floor beside her, not out of duty, but out of empathy. She crossed her legs and pulled from her pocket a crumpled, golden-wrapped candy. "It's just bad sugar, but it helps sometimes," she said with a half-smile. The girl didn't take it, but she watched. And the simple fact that she watched was more than many had managed. From the upper floor, behind a one-way glass wall, a man silently watched the scene. Tall in a flawless black suit, white shirt without a single crease, polished shoes. Dark brown hair neatly cut, clean-shaven, stern expression. It was Ethan Whitmore. He was there for a quick appointment with a private doctor who saw patients outside normal hours for reasons he preferred to keep to himself. Standing with his hands in his blazer pockets, his grayish-green eyes narrowed as he saw his daughter interacting, even if only slightly, with a complete stranger. Lily, his daughter, who hadn't said a word in over a year. And what unsettled him wasn't the fact that she was alone, not even that she was clearly shaken. It was the look she gave that unknown hospital worker, a look he hadn't seen since he lost her mother. There, in that quiet lobby, Claire, without knowing it, had done something no one had been able to do in a long time. She reached Lily and Ethan, the man who saw everything in numbers. Contracts and projections couldn't help the unsettling feeling rising in his chest. Who was that woman? And why was his daughter looking at her like that? Ethan remained still in front of the large glass window on the second floor, arms crossed, jaw slightly clenched. Down below, in the hospital lobby, The scene played out in silence, like a play too intimate to be interrupted. The air in the private waiting room was warm, but he felt cold. An old kind of cold. Claire was now reaching into her lab coat pockets. With calm, almost maternal gestures, she pulled out a folded piece of paper and a worn-out pencil, the kind used by children in public schools. She opened the paper on her lap and slowly extended it toward the little girl. "If you want to draw, just to pass the time," she said, not expecting an answer. Lily didn't react right away. She looked at the paper as if she didn't understand what it was, as if someone offering her something without expecting anything in return was a foreign concept. Ethan felt a discomfort rise within him, an involuntary thought. How long had it been since anyone spoke to Lily with that kind of calm? No commands, no anxious questions, no therapeutic instructions. The girl let go of her teddy bear for a moment and took the pencil delicately as if it were something sacred. Then she lowered her eyes and began to scribble with hesitant strokes. The sound of the graphite scratching the paper seemed to echo through Ethan's chest. Claire didn't interrupt. She simply sat a little closer, crossed her legs, and gave a soft smile. She brought both hands to her face and formed a forced smile, with her fingers showing the girl what a happy face looked like. Like this is how we show when we're happy. Even if we don't say anything, our face speaks for us. Lily stopped drawing. She looked at Claire with large, deep eyes. Then, as if pulling the gesture from months of silence, she did the same with her own hands, gently tugging at the corners of her mouth, trying to mimic the expression. It was small, clumsy, but it was a smile. Ethan lost his breath for a second. The little girl who hadn't smiled since her mother's funeral, who hadn't uttered a word in any session, who didn't react even when he took her to the zoo, was smiling. Even if only with her fingers, even if only by instinct. And it wasn't for him. It was for a stranger. Ethan's gaze drifted. He looked up at the ceiling, trying to contain the sudden sting in his eyes. He took a deep breath, but his chest didn't feel like before. Claire then pointed at the paper and asked, "Can I see?" Lily turned the sketch pad slightly, revealing a simple yet recognizable drawing. A face with large, round eyes, hair tied in a bun, and a small crooked smile. In pencil. Claire smiled, voice slightly shaky. "Is that me?" The girl nodded gently. Ethan, up above, closed his eyes for a moment. He couldn't bear to watch anymore, but he couldn't look away either. The private consultant entered the room, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Whitmore, we can begin the routine assessment." Ethan raised a hand, eyes still locked on the glass. "Later." The doctor hesitated. "But sir, it's only 15 minutes. Later?" Ethan repeated, softer, never looking away from his daughter. The doctor left, and Ethan, the man who ran hotel chains across 3 continents, who gave orders in boardrooms of 50 executives, now stood silently, motionless, watching his daughter connect with a woman whose name he didn't even know. It was like watching a block of ancient ice begin to melt under the light of a single candle. There, in the simplicity of a sheet of paper, an old pencil, and a spontaneous gesture, Claire had done what well-paid psychologists, renowned educators, and elite family consultants hadn't. She got in. She stepped into Lily's closed-off world, and Ethan, though he didn't yet fully understand it, felt deep inside that this moment wasn't ordinary. It was a turning point. On the outside, he looked like just another executive in silence, but inside, a chasm was beginning to crack. A chasm made of guilt, unprocessed grief, and the fear of losing his daughter to the same silence where he himself had taken refuge. And for the first time since the funeral, he asked himself the question he had been avoiding at all costs. What? If I'm not enough to save her? The morning sun had barely broken over the Denver sky when Ethan was already up in his silent, perfectly organized home, wearing a freshly pressed white shirt and drinking his second black coffee of the day. Still without sugar, still without taste. He stood by the window in the library, watching as Lily drew at the table in the back of the room, her colored pencils organized by hue. She didn't notice him. She was focused, silent, as always. But there was something different about that silence. He turned slowly, the warm cup still in hand. He watched his daughter hunched over the paper, her lines uncertain but purposeful, and then approached. "What are you drawing, Lily?" She paused for a brief moment. With the same delicacy with which she approached the world, she turned the paper toward him. It was a face, hair tied in a bun. A delicate smile. It was Claire. Ethan froze. The little girl who had drawn nothing but clouds, locked doors, faceless figures, or repetitive swirling scribbles for over a year, had drawn someone. A face. A real person. More than that, she pointed. Her small, precise finger touched the top of the woman's drawn bun. Then she looked up at her father with those large, clear eyes. Ethan's voice came out rough, uncontrolled. "You want to see her again?" Lily didn't answer, but she picked up another sheet of paper and began drawing the same figure, the same bun, the same smile. He stepped back as if standing before something fragile he didn't know how to handle. He returned to his office and picked up the landline phone resting on the dark oak desk. "Thomas, I need you to find out who the night shift receptionist was at Denver Public Hospital. The one who interacted with Lily." The assistant didn't question it. He was used to Ethan's unusual requests. 2 hours later, the report arrived in his personal email. Ethan opened it without expression, like reading yet another contract. But the information didn't hit with the coldness he'd expected. Claire Dawson, 27 years old, receptionist at the hospital for 3 years. No criminal record, single, no living relatives listed. Lived alone in a small studio in Lincoln Park. Income below state average. No health insurance. Nursing student enrollment currently. Suspended due to unpaid tuition. Nothing stood out. No medals. No credentials. No strategic advantage. But what unsettled him wasn't in the data. It was in the fact that his daughter had responded to this woman's existence. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling for long minutes. That name echoed like a persistent whisper. Claire Dawson. "Why her?" he murmured softly. "What does she have that the others didn't?" It was a troubling question because for the first time he couldn't find a logical answer. It wasn't the resume nor the technical behavior. It wasn't training nor credentials. It was presence. It was the way she looked at Lily, without hurry, without fear. Without a diagnosis, Ethan closed the laptop. His reflection in the glass of the cabinet was as stern as ever. But his eyes, something in his eyes had changed. Still, he tried to rationalize. It was just gratitude from his daughter, an isolated emotional response. Nothing more, but then he heard soft footsteps behind him. Lily entered the office, holding the drawing. She handed it to him without a word. In the lower corner of the page, there was a sentence scribbled with childish effort, shaky and misaligned. Letters. "I want to see her." Ethan looked at his daughter, speechless. She didn't speak, but now she was asking. With a drawing. With a look. And that shattered everything he had tried to keep standing. The logic. The resistance. The control. Because for the first time in a long time, Lily had chosen someone, and it wasn't him. The day dawned overcast in Denver. The public hospital breathed its usual exhaustion, the smell of cheap disinfectant, the distant wail of ambulance sirens, and hurried footsteps echoing through narrow, dimly lit corridors. Claire was on her third consecutive shift. Her dark circles were deeper, her light brown hair thrown into a rushed bun, and the pen clipped to her clipboard barely worked anymore. Still, she carried out every task with care, like someone who, even in exhaustion, knows they can't afford to slip up. She'd barely had time for a coffee when a supervising nurse approached her, wearing an expression that mixed surprise with suspicion. "Claire? Admin wants to talk to you now." Claire felt a chill in her stomach. It was never good to be called to administration, especially without warning. She walked down the halls with tight, anxious steps, passing by patients seated in plastic chairs, crying children, and companions sleeping upright. When she entered the administrative office, she found 3 people: her supervisor, a man in a suit holding folders, and a woman in a light blazer she'd never seen before. They were all smiling too much. "Miss Dawson," the woman began with a rehearsed voice, "you've been selected for a special training program sponsored by a private healthcare network." Claire frowned, confused. "Sorry, selected how?" The suited man stepped forward, sliding a letterhead document across the table. "Your name was submitted by an external sponsor. Someone noticed your performance and initiative and decided to offer you a full scholarship for advanced training. You'd receive a paid course, transportation, uniforms, and potentially a job offer at an affiliated clinic afterward." Claire stood in silence for a few seconds, eyes fixed on the papers in front of her like they were a trap written in formal language. This is real?" she asked, skeptical. Her supervisor gave a half smile. "This kind of thing doesn't happen every day, Claire. And honestly, it's a huge opportunity. If I were you, I'd take it." She scanned the contract. There was no donor's name, no identifiable company, just a vague description: corporate benefit for institutional support of community talents. A tightness pressed in her chest. It was too good. No one looked at someone like her with this kind of attention. No one, except Lily. The memory of the blue-eyed girl in the drawing returned like a soft breath in the back of her mind. Something about this was connected. "Does this have anything to do with what happened yesterday?" she asked quietly. The woman in the blazer smiled cryptically. "What happened yesterday?" Claire swallowed hard. "Nothing. Never mind." She couldn't say no. She'd already lost 2 enrollments in nursing school due to lack of payment. She'd spent nights selling off her late grandmother's things to make rent. This was, without a doubt, the kind of chance she couldn't let pass. "If I accept." "Where's the course?" "In an advanced care unit about 20 minutes from downtown. We provide transportation. You just need to show up and commit." Claire signed the form. Her hands trembled. It wasn't confidence, it was cautious. Resignation. The kind of decision someone makes because they have no other choice. As she exited the room, she slipped her ID badge back over her neck and walked through the automatic glass door. She didn't see the black car parked across the street with its tinted windows. Inside it, Ethan watched. No suit, no expression. Only the focused gaze of a man who orchestrated everything and still didn't know why. He didn't speak to her that day. He didn't want to interfere. Not yet. But something anchored him to that woman in a simple lab coat, now holding an envelope like it was too fragile to believe in. He started the engine with a single certainty. From now on, nothing would ever be the same. The taxi stopped in front of a mirrored glass building in Denver's financial district. Claire stepped out with short, hesitant strides, clutching the strap of the simple purse he had inherited from her grandmother. She wore the new uniform that had arrived by mail the night before, a navy blue cotton shirt with a stiff collar, straight-cut gray slacks, and a blank ID badge clipped at her waist. She felt out of place before she even walked in. Crossing the cold lobby, she felt the brutal contrast. Everything was too quiet, too clean, too orderly, teetering on the edge of sterility. No curious glances. No good mornings. Just hurried footsteps, spotless glass, and elevators that closed as if swallowing people whole. She was escorted by a silent staff member to the 16th floor. A hallway of soft carpets and contemporary artwork led to a set of dark wooden double doors. The woman didn't knock, just opened the door and motioned for her to enter. Claire swallowed hard, took a breath, and walked in. The room was spacious, wrapped in windows overlooking the city. The walls were dressed in gray and warm wood tones. A minimalist bookshelf held only a few black-covered books. And at the center, behind a glass desk, him, Ethan Whitmore. This time, no suit. He wore a white shirt with sleeves rolled up to the elbows. He stood facing the window, hands in his pockets, as if he'd known she was there before the door even opened. Claire said nothing, just stood still, trying to understand why she was there, why a man so far above her world had sent for her. Turned slowly. His gray-green eyes studied her calmly, not coldly, but without a smile either. "Do you recognize my daughter?" Claire pressed her lips together, surprised by the direct question. She nodded slowly. Yes, she was alone. She looked scared. I just tried to help." Ethan stepped closer with measured steps. He stopped less than a meter from her. "Lily doesn't smile, doesn't speak, doesn't react." Claire remained silent. "But with you," he continued, his voice lower now, almost human, she smiled. The emotion restrained in his voice contradicted the image of the man she'd seen in media headlines. This wasn't a cold CEO. This was a father, exhausted, lost. "I didn't even know she could still do that." Claire looked away. She wanted to leave. Wanted to go back to the chaos of the hospital, where things made sense. "Why am I here, Mr. Whitmore?" He walked to the desk and picked up a brown envelope. Held it out to her. "Because I want to offer you something." She didn't reach for it. Just waited. "I want to hire you. Not as a receptionist, not as a hospital employee, but as my daughter's therapeutic companion. You would stay by her side every day. At home, on trips, during moments of crisis." Claire stepped back half a pace. "I'm sorry. What?" "My daughter connected with you, and I can't ignore that. But I'm not a therapist. I'm not trained. I haven't even finished college yet." "I know." "Then why me?" He hesitated, then answered with the honesty of someone tired of pretending. "Because, for the first time in 2 years, she looked at someone." Claire was speechless. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan stepped closer. There was no arrogance now, only urgency. You'd have support, a room of your own, flexible hours, freedom to continue your studies, everything paid. "I just need you close to her." Claire ran her hand over her face as if trying to wake up from a disoriented dream. "This is completely outside my world." "I know," he said again. "But in hers, you're already inside." She stood still for long seconds, the envelope still outstretched, untouched. Outside, the city moved on with its relentless speed. But inside that room, 2 worlds were trying to meet. And she knew, with a kind of quiet intuition she couldn't explain, that accepting this offer would mean stepping into something much bigger than a job. It would be the beginning of a new life. But at what cost? The silence in Ethan's office felt heavy. Claire remained still, the envelope pressed to her chest, her heart pounding like it wanted to run. She could feel his gaze on her, warm and expectant, but she didn't meet it. She took a deep breath, clutched the envelope tighter, and finally lifted her eyes. "I can't accept." The words came out firm, even if inside she was trembling. Ethan's brow furrowed. "You can't?" She needs real help, she said. I'm just a receptionist. I'm not qualified. What if I do something wrong? What if I accidentally hurt her more than help? He stepped a little closer. His gray-green eyes were softer now, like they'd learned how to listen. You already helped, just by being there, by not trying to fix her, by looking at her like a child, not a problem. Claire shook her head. What happened between us in that hospital? That was a moment. Instinct. I'm not the right person for this. Just then, a side door opened. A staff member walked in, holding Lily's hand. The girl wore a light dress and blue sneakers, her platinum hair in two thin braids. She clutched the same sketchbook to her chest. Claire froze. She hadn't expected to see her. Lily walked slowly toward Claire and stopped. In front of her. She reached out her small hand and took Claire's fingers, holding on tight. Then she turned and looked straight at her father, something she never did, and shook her head no. Then she pointed to Claire. Without letting go of her hand, Ethan said nothing. But his expression softened. The tension in his shoulders dropped. He understood. And so did Claire. That little girl, who hadn't spoken a word, was speaking. Claire knelt down to Lily's level and gently touched her cheek. You want me to stay? Lily nodded. And in that simple gesture, there was more truth than in any contract. Claire stood up, looked at Ethan, and let out a slow sigh. If I accept, it's with a condition. Anything, he said immediately. I need to keep studying. I left college because I couldn't afford it, but I can't give up. Becoming a nurse is my dream. It's what drives me. Ethan nodded. It's done. All costs covered. You can enroll today. And I won't be a nanny or a shadow. I'll be there for her, yes, but I need to respect my limits, my time, my identity. Agreed. He walked over to the desk, took a gold pen, and wrote something on the paper inside the envelope. Then he signed it with purpose and pushed the contract toward her. Claire hesitated a moment longer. Then, with a deep breath, she picked up the pen and signed her name in bold letters. Even though her heart was pounding. In that moment, they sealed something far bigger than a professional agreement. It was the beginning of an unexpected bond. But Ethan, even as he kept his face calm, was already reorganizing things within himself. Quietly, he set his own internal rules, ones he wouldn't even admit aloud. Keep a safe distance. Control every detail. Don't let emotion unravel his routine again. He just didn't know that, from that moment on, nothing inside him would stay the same. In the days that followed, the routine at the Whitmore mansion changed. The once silent hallways now echoed with soft footsteps and quiet laughter. Lily sat beside Claire in the sunroom, drawing, sometimes in silence, sometimes just pointing at colors as if she were learning to name the world all over again. Ethan, though wrapped up in meetings and virtual obligations, began peeking through the half-open door whenever he could. He watched from afar but felt, for the first time in a very long while, that there was something alive inside his home. But beyond those walls, the transformation didn't go unnoticed. In the polished, curated circles Ethan moved through. Charity galas, investor meetings, exclusive development launches, a whisper began to spread. Who's the new woman in the Whitmore house? A nanny? A tutor? Or just another opportunist looking for comfort? The question soon gave way to insinuations. Distant photos taken by nosy neighbors. Short clips of Claire in the garden picking flowers with Lily. A poorly timed comment at a gala. Then came the blow. Sophia Lancaster, former head of communications at Whitmore Enterprises, and a woman who had harbored unreturned feelings for Ethan, saw her opportunity. She filed an anonymous report with the city's juvenile court. The text was cold, cloaked in feigned concern. A woman with no qualifications, no family ties, And no psychological training is living with a child in an emotionally vulnerable state. There are clear signs of emotional exploitation disguised as support. Urgent review recommended. Claire was called in for questioning. She received the summons after her night nursing class, still wearing a coffee-stained uniform, her notebook soaked with rain. When she read the contents, the world tilted beneath her feet. The courtroom was too bright, too cold. The judge, a gray-haired man with a stern face, looked over his glasses and asked the question like a verdict. Are you exploiting the emotional vulnerability of a millionaire child for personal gain? Claire's legs trembled. The words refused to come. Answer the question, Miss Dawson. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Until another voice rose from the back of the room. She doesn't need to answer. All eyes turned. Ethan stood at the door in a flawless dark suit, his face more human than he had ever shown in public. He walked steadily to the front of the room and met the judge's gaze. I'm the one who hired her. I'm the one who brought her into my home because my daughter didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't look anyone in the eyes. Until Claire. The judge frowned. Mr. Whitmore, that does not qualify her for such a sensitive, technical qualifications don't create bonds. Love does, presence does, and she is the only bridge between my daughter and the world. The room went still. Claire tried to hold back tears, but her eyes were already full. Ethan continued, steady. Claire didn't take anything from Lily. She gave back what I thought my daughter had lost forever. The judge lowered his eyes to the paperwork, thoughtful. We'll review the social worker's reports. But for now, the guardianship remains as is. Outside, Claire left without a word. She didn't speak to Ethan, just walked toward the parking lot like she wanted to vanish. But he followed. Are you okay? He asked softly as he reached her. She didn't answer right away. Just looked at him, eyes shimmering, voice trembling. I never wanted any of this. I never asked for anything. And now I feel like I did something wrong just for caring about her. Ethan paused, then replied quietly, You didn't do anything wrong. You just went where no one else had the courage to go. And there, in that empty parking lot, Claire understood something. The world around her might doubt her, but Lily didn't. And in a way he was only beginning to understand, Ethan didn't either. The next day dawned overcast, a thick fog draping the Whitmore Estates gardens in a heavy gray veil. The early morning silence was broken only by the hurried steps echoing through the main office. Claire had left early for class, and Lily was still believed to be asleep upstairs, or so they thought. In the library, Ethan was in a heated discussion with two of his top executives. His eyes were sharp, voice raised more than usual. They had brought reports detailing damage to public perception, rising negative engagement, and pressure from conservative investors. You need to think about the future of the holding, Ethan, said one, a man in a gray suit with a measured voice. Having an unqualified woman living in your home with unrestricted access to your daughter is reckless. It's dangerous. She's emotionally vulnerable. This could be seen as undue influence. You're opening the door to a new scandal. Ethan slammed his palm onto the table. The only crisis here would be if I took away the one person who brought my daughter back to the surface. The younger executive pushed back. You're mixing business with personal matters. You're losing objectivity. And we can't let personal decisions jeopardize the entire structure. It was in that moment Lily appeared behind the door, barefoot, clutching her teddy bear. Her eyes wide, face pale. She didn't understand all the words, but she knew the tone, the one that came before something was taken away, before absence, before separation. Frightened, she turned and walked quietly back down the hallway, descended the stairs without a sound, and slipped out the back door. The estate had walls and guards, but Lily knew a small side gate that led to the street. No one saw her leave. It wasn't until Claire returned from class and went upstairs to check on her that anyone realized. The room was empty, the bed unmade. Her sneakers gone. She's not here. Claire shouted from the top of the stairs. Panic broke out. Staff rushed in all directions. Security reviewed camera footage. Ethan climbed the stairs in silence, his face stone still. Claire looked at him, her eyes already brimming with tears. She heard it, the argument. She must have. Thought you were going to send me away. I'll find her, Claire said, grabbing her coat and running to the garage. She knew where to go. There was only one place where Lily felt safe outside the mansion, the public garden in front of the hospital, where it had all begun, and there she was. Under the gray sky and cold wind, Lily sat on a stone bench, arms wrapped around her knees, face buried. Her teddy bear lay in the grass. Claire approached quietly, not calling her name. She didn't want to startle her. When she got close enough, Lily looked up. Her eyes were red, but dry. That kind of silence, the kind that holds everything in, was heavier than crying. She didn't say a word. She just stood suddenly and ran into Claire's arms, holding her tight, like she never wanted to let go again. Claire held her back, her own heart pounding. It's okay, I'm here, and no one's going to take me away from you. Minutes later, they returned to the mansion. The front door was already open. Ethan stood at the base of the stairs inside, on his knees, hands clasped, as if in prayer or drowning in guilt. When he saw Lily in Claire's arms, his head lifted. His eyes were filled with tears. Lily slipped down from Claire's embrace and ran to him, throwing herself into his arms. Ethan held her tightly, burying his face in her hair. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm sorry for not knowing how to protect you, or the one who protects you. Claire stood frozen, unsure whether she should step closer. But then Ethan turned to her, voice unsteady. I don't know how to lead this anymore. I don't know where the man I was ends, and where the one I need to become begins. But I know one thing. He paused. I can't lose either of you. That night, after the scare of Lily's disappearance, the Whitmore mansion had returned to an odd silence. Not the peaceful kind that settles in when things are calm, but the heavy silence of unspoken decisions, weighing on every corner of the house. Claire sat alone in an armchair in the upstairs hallway, fingers interlaced, her gaze lost in nothing. It was past midnight. Lily was asleep in the room next door, and Ethan, since their return that afternoon, hadn't said a word. The house had withdrawn into itself. The air was thick with thoughts no one dared voice. Claire felt her chest tight. That luxurious ceiling seemed to be pressing down on her. Everything around her was too large, too clean, too expensive. And she was just a woman trying to study, pay her bills, survive. She looked around, the polished wood railing, imported rugs, minimalist artwork lining the walls. Not one thing felt built to welcome someone like her. No matter what Ethan said or what Lily had shown, this world wasn't hers. She rose slowly, walked to her room, and began folding her clothes. She fetched her apron from the laundry room and laid it on top of the small suitcase. Took her anatomy book from the desk, her notebook, the chipped mug she used every morning. She felt like a burden, a misplaced body trying to fake belonging. But when she pulled back the blanket to straighten the bed, she found something. A piece of paper, folded neatly in four, left gently on the pillow. Claire's heart beat faster without reason. She sat down and unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing. Crayon strokes, wobbly and childlike. 3 figures holding hands. In the center, a little girl with golden hair and 2 braids. To the left, a woman with a bun high on her head. To the right, a tall man in a black suit. Beneath the drawing, a single word. written in shaky, spaced-out letters. Stay. Claire brought her hand to her mouth, trying to stop the sob that came like a wave. The paper trembled in her fingers. That single word, written by a child who almost never spoke, said more than any courtroom defense or boardroom declaration. It was Lily's choice. She was asking not to be left again. Claire pressed the drawing to her chest, eyes closed. This wasn't about deserving a place. It was about being needed. And sometimes that meant more than any degree, title, or last name. She descended the stairs slowly, the drawing still in her hands. Passed through the dark living room, drawn by the faint light still on in the kitchen, like a candle at the end of an emotional hallway. And there, in the dim kitchen glow, she found Ethan, leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, barefoot, his stubble starting to show. The stove let off the soft warmth of milk, or maybe tea. He looked up as she entered and froze for a moment. Claire wore a faded apron. Her hair was messily tied back, dark circles under her pale skin, no makeup, no mask. Just her. Ethan looked at her with something between weariness and calm, like he'd finally found what he didn't know he'd been searching for. I thought about leaving, she said, voice soft but steady, because I feel like I don't belong here. I wasn't made for this house, these halls, this life. He didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer, carefully, like any sudden movement might scare off the one thing that mattered most. His eyes were full of things he'd never dared say. I grew up in this world, Claire. I was trained to lead, to stay silent, to build everything around me like armor. But I was never taught how to open up. I never learned how to care. She still held the drawing between her fingers. She didn't show it. She didn't need to. She just felt it. You don't need to be like us, he continued. I don't want you to become another piece that fits into what already existed. He paused. His voice came out low but steady. I want my world to start becoming part of yours. Claire felt the tears fall, silent, down her cheeks. There was nothing more to say. Because, for the first time, he wasn't speaking as a CEO or even as a father trying to protect his child. He was speaking as a man, and she, a woman who had been invisible for far too long, was finally being seen. But the decision was still hers. And what came next would change everything. Time passed. Not quickly, not easily. But it passed. 3 months after the night Claire nearly left, the Whitmore mansion was different. Or perhaps it was the same, only now filled with something invisible and essential. The air carried the sound of light footsteps running down the hall, the soft scent of flowers picked by small hands, and laughter that came in flashes, echoes of what once was pain. Lily had begun turning her silences into bolder gestures. She held eye contact longer, gripped hands with certainty, touched the world as if rehearsing words with her fingertips. She still didn't speak much, but she left notes, clearer, braver every time. Claire divided her days between her studies, caring for Lily, and the new project she had created alongside Ethan, a community program for emotional support of children dealing with grief, trauma, or abandonment. The name of the project came from something Lily once wrote on a folded piece of paper: Place that listens. Ethan, on his end, started appearing less at galas and more in circles with single mothers, local educators, and community psychologists. He listened more, spoke less. He'd slowly learned that presence isn't measured in speeches or wealth. That Saturday, a community fair was held in Denver's Central Park, the same place where months ago Lily had run away and been found, under a gray sky. But now the sky was blue. The lawn was alive with colorful tents, hand-painted signs, toy donation boxes, and storytelling circles. Claire wore a simple blue cotton dress, her hair pulled into a low bun, the project's badge hanging on her chest. Ethan wore dark jeans and a rolled-up white linen shirt. There were no bodyguards, no protocol. Just the two of them, together. At the heart of the event, a small stage had been set up, decorated with flowers and a single microphone. Children from the program had been invited to read short sentences about what they'd learned since joining. Simple, honest, true. Claire helped Lily up the stage steps, holding her small hands with steady reassurance. Lily wore a white dress, with a bow at the back, her golden hair in two fine braids. She held a folded piece of paper in her hands. The audience settled into folding chairs, tired parents, baby strollers, volunteers, local journalists, teachers. But for Claire, the world disappeared. All that existed was that little girl standing before the mic. Lily looked at the paper, then at Claire. Claire nodded, eyes brimming. And then, in a hoarse, hesitant, trembling voice, Lily spoke. Everyone deserves someone who stays, even when no one's watching. The crowd fell into a hush, not just because of the words themselves, but because of what they meant. Claire brought her hands to her face, overwhelmed. Ethan, sitting in the front row, stood without hesitation. He walked up, held his hand out to his daughter. Lily ran into his arms, hugging him tight. Then she turned and pulled Claire into the embrace too. There, the three of them stood, wrapped in each other, in the middle of a crowd. No words spoken, but everything was understood. Later, as they sat on the grass, Lily asleep between them, Claire looked up at the now clear, open sky. She took a deep breath. I used to think I needed to find my place in the world, but maybe I just needed to be someone's place. Ethan squeezed her hand. No words. He didn't need them. Life wasn't perfect. There would be more challenges, more doubts, more eyes watching from a distance. But now there were roots and belonging. That afternoon, between the colorful tents and the voices of a healing community, one truth settled in their hearts, a truth they'd carry forever. What matters isn't always visible. Love doesn't always arrive with promises. Sometimes it's born in silence, grows in listening, and finally reveals itself in the eyes of the one who stays, even when no one else is watching. In the months following the community fair, the day Lily spoke her first words in public, life moved on. Not perfectly, but real. Claire continued her night classes in nursing, now in her final semester, balancing her studies with the growing responsibilities of the community project she had co-created with Ethan. The project flourished. What began as a simple tent in the park became a small, vibrant center in the Denver suburbs, a place where single mothers, widowed fathers, quiet children, and dedicated volunteers came together each week. Ethan, despite business meetings and corporate demands, kept every Friday afternoon free, not as the CEO of Whitmore Enterprises, but as Lily's father. As a man in quiet reconstruction, Lily now attended an inclusive school, learning at her own pace. She still spoke little, but read fluently and left notes for Claire, sticking folded papers on the kitchen door. Sometimes she'd draw hearts with 3 tiny dots inside, her way of showing their family. One evening, close to Christmas, the house was quiet. Claire was closing her books on the sofa while Ethan stood at the window, watching the snow fall outside. There was something in the air, not tension, but fullness. Claire looked at him and smiled, pen still in hand. Do you think things will ever go back to how they were? Ethan didn't respond right away. He walked over, sat beside her, and said in a soft voice, "No, and honestly, I hope they don't." She looked at him, surprised. Before, it looked perfect on the outside, but inside, it was empty. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. And now? He wrapped his arm around her, not just holding a person, but a choice. Now there's what matters. There's you. There's her voice. There's meaning. Lily appeared on the stairs, sleepy, clutching her teddy bear. She walked toward them and without a word settled between the two. Claire tucked a blanket over her lap. Ethan pulled her close with the other arm. And there, on the couch of a house that had once been cold and untouchable, something formed, something no amount of money could build. Belonging, the kind of love that doesn't start with promises, but with presence. And on that winter night, with snow covering the world outside, Lily whispered, as if only the wind were meant to hear, "Thank you for staying." Tell us in the comments, from 0 to 10, how much did this story move you? If you felt something like the video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. Oh, and before you go, I've picked another story for you, even more powerful. Go watch it. It's sure to touch your heart.